Welcome to Interview Connections. We're the first ever podcast booking agency. I'm Jessica Rhodes, the founder. And 12 years ago in 2013, I started booking my dad as a guest on podcasts because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And fast forward to today, we're a multi-seven-figure agency. We've worked with over 800 clients. We've booked more than 30,000 podcast interviews. And this podcast is all of our top lessons from the last 12 years, booking entrepreneurs on podcasts, scaling our company to be multi-seven figures a year, distilled down into bite-sized topics and episodes to help you learn from us. I co-host this show with Interview Connections co-owner and CEO, Margy. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode.
In today's episode, we are talking all about the mindset and energetics of being a successful podcast guest. And as you know, we are strategic girlies. We share tactics and strategies all the time. And those things are great and important. But we are also consistent podcast guests ourselves. We have been on many podcasts. We have booked over 1,000 clients on podcasts. We've booked over 40,000 podcast interviews as a company. And we have seen some very clear patterns in our clients who are the most successful with podcast guesting in terms of financial ROI, opportunities, speaking engagements, all of that good stuff. And while the tactics and strategies are really important and we will continue to teach them, the thing that sets clients apart, where you can tell before they even do a podcast that they're going to be successful, is their mindset and their energy.
Yeah, the energetics of podcast guesting are huge. And sometimes it's the most unsatisfying lesson because it's like you can't like see it, you feel it. But it's so true. When I think about our clients, like that have had so much success and have had leads from podcast interviews and hosts become their clients, and just the results are endless. It's their energy. It's their energy in terms of they know it'll work. They believe it'll work. They trust. They're open to it working. They're open to all possibilities. That's what welcomes in the abundance. I was talking about this yesterday. I led a training for our clients all about calls to action, because that's one of the tactics that we talk a lot about. Your call to action. What do you say at the end of a podcast? The do's and don'ts, the ideas, the lead magnets, the landing page, all the tactics. And then I said, you could break every single rule that I've just told you and still have amazing success if you have the right energy, because it's not about the tactics. It's about your energy. You know, our client, Jonathan, we aired his case study on the podcast recently, 9 figures from podcast guesting. Like, how is that even possible? I don't even, like, my mind is blown by that.
That sounds like a made up number. I was like, wait, he said 9, and Jess was like, he said 9. I was like, that's amazing.
Like investors, speaking opportunities, book sales, leads. His call to action, he tells people to Google him. I'm like, Jonathan, what?
Yeah. And I think that is so huge, right? The tactics and strategies are there as a support, and picking the tactics and strategies that align with you and work for you are amazing. But so much of it is the energetics. So much of it is that magnetism. And we're going to kind of break down the energetics of podcast interviews in general and the energetics of what makes you magnetic as a guest, because that is so much of what draws hosts, listeners to you. So podcasts energetically are, first of all, responsive, which, if you like human design, 80% of the population are responders. Even if you don't care about human design, which is totally fine, you probably, because 80% is the majority, can relate to it being easier to deliver really valuable content when someone asks you a great question rather than doing it in a vacuum. So if you sit down with your phone in front of you to make a video, or sit down at a blank Google Doc to write a blog post, maybe nothing's coming to you. But if someone asks you a great question and you get into a great conversation, suddenly you're energized and really your expertise is spilling out of you and your excitement. And that is when you're delivering your most magnetic content. So the responsive aspect of a podcast is a huge piece of the energy there and a huge piece of why it can bring out the best in people. Podcasts are also collaborative. The podcasting space is a space of collaboration. It is not the same as a summit, and it is not a webinar. It is not an infomercial. You aren't pitching and selling when you do a podcast interview. It is really collaborative with the host. You're coming together to create value for the audience. And having that mindset that's aligned with the energetics of podcast guesting, which is that collaboration, that generosity, that giving, that is such an important piece of it energetically too.
Yeah, it's a co-creation, and there's this equal value from the host and the guest. There is this just equal creation, and I think listeners really love that. They love when it's this balanced conversation and there's value from the host leading the conversation and having the show. There's value from who they chose to bring on the show, because that's another piece of the energetics is the guest was chosen by the host, whether the host reached out to that guest, or the guest, was pitched and booked by their amazing booking agents at Interview Connections. There was this choice to say, let's come together. I think this could be really, really great. And there's some spark there that then really lights up when they're in the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, when you listen to a podcast regularly, the host feels like your friend. And so their guest feels like your friend's friend, which kind of sounds like a referral, right? It's very, very warm. It's very connected. And the third thing is human connection, which people are talking so much about, how everything's AI and everything's written by AI, and people won't read an email for 8 seconds and they're scrolling for 2 seconds on things. And Jess and I are like, our clients have people listening to them for 30 to 45 minutes. Like, this is real connection. This is people's focused attention. You have the host focused listening. You have their audience focused listening. That is so powerful. And that human aspect of, I feel like I know you because I'm hearing you speak. I'm hearing you share your story. It can't be overstated.
Yeah. And also another thing about the energetics of podcast guesting is being really open and excited about each interview opportunity, regardless of the size of the show, or any preconceived notions about how good of a fit the show may be. And that's not to say you can't be more excited when you're like, oh my God, this is such a great show, but being really open and grateful for the opportunity to speak on someone's virtual stage on their podcast is really huge. I remember this call I had with a client, it was years ago, and they were kind of like, their energy was not super clean. They were not sure. They were like, I feel like these podcasts are kind of small, but I'm doing a great job on the show. And I said, well, you're telling me you don't think these shows are good enough for you. The host can read that energy, even if you're not saying it. If you're going into shows feeling like, I don't have time for this, I don't know if this is going to work, your energy can be felt. It can be read. Even if the words you're saying aren't what you're thinking, there's going to be a misalignment there. So that's another thing I've seen is when there's full alignment with how somebody is thinking and feeling and how they're behaving and what they're saying, that's when they will attract more abundance. But if you're thinking and feeling one way but saying something else, it gets messy, and that's when results get blocked.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with having a criteria for shows, for wanting a show to be established, wanting a show to be aligned with your target audience. That's really important. We work with our clients to make sure that all the shows are targeted. But when people come into sales calls and they have this attitude, like Jess is saying, of like, well, will this be worth my time? I automatically know that it's probably not going to be a great fit. And I actually had a call with someone who he didn't have this attitude, but he was really interesting, and he was targeting people who were like, net worth $100,000 plus. And he was like, people think that those people would be listening to like the Forbes podcast and stuff like that. And he was like, they're not. He said, I was on a podcast that was so small and it was so niche. And this guy reached out and did $100 million real estate deal with me from that. And I think people get in this mentality of like, is this worth my time? I only want to be in front of huge audiences, and they miss out on these incredible networking opportunities that are right there in front of them. Whereas our clients who show up at every interview and want to do their best and create a real connection and relationship with the host, they are raking in the clients and the money from their podcast guesting.
Yeah. And if you are, I know we have a lot of listeners who are coaches or healers, like you work with your clients in a really deep way. Podcast guesting is the perfect marketing strategy for you because people need to feel your energy before they work with you. We've never worked with a coach that we didn't just feel like in our sacral authority, this is the right person for us. We feel their energy. We're like, this is somebody I want to be around because I want to be around their energy. I want to learn from them. I want them to guide me. But there's an energy that has us want to invest in somebody's services or program or products. And so your listeners, your clients are the same way. They need to feel your energy. You could have the best sales page. You could have the best photos, you could have this great headshot and all, but they need to hear you speak. And when people hear you speak, they feel your energy. And that's what has them just saying yes. Like our client, Christina L. Woods, who's a hypnotherapist. She's an energy healer. She's an empowerment coach. She's had clients who they see a clip of her being interviewed on a podcast. Like she takes the clip from the interview and puts it on her Instagram. It's just a clip of the podcast interview. And people hear that. They see her speak in the podcast with the energy with the host. And they're like, she's for me. I like her. There's something about her she's for me. So that's why podcast guesting is such an energetic marketing strategy, is because people feel your energy when they hear you speak. That's literally the vibration of your voice is what has people feel a certain way.
Yeah. And so if the energy's off, people know because it's such a connected medium. They get a feel of your vibe really, really quick. So that's what makes it so valuable and so powerful. And on the flip side, that's what makes going into it with not the right energy or not the right mindset a frustrating experience.
Yeah, I had a call yesterday with an incoming client, and he's very into personal development and mindset and energy and all this stuff. And quite often leads who are into this stuff will comment on my energy. They're like, you have such great energy. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. Because I do a lot to regulate my nervous system, but I'm present. The thing I think that has them comment on that is that I'm present and I'm focused in the conversation. I don't have notifications popping up. Like I'm there. And when people feel fully seen and heard, they know you're not distracted. You're not thinking about other things. Like you're so focused. That's the energy. And when you are focused and present in a podcast interview, you're listening to the host. Like people hear the connection. And trust me, they can tell if you're distracted. They can tell if you're nervous and you're uptight and you're like, I gotta go. They can tell. That energy is going to feel off. But when you're super calm and you're present and you're focused and you're fully listening to the host, the listeners and the audience are going to want to feel that too. They feel the secondhand attention from you giving it to the host. And so they're going to want to be in a one-on-one conversation with you too.
Yes. And if you're like, but I'm new to this, what if I am nervous and it messes with my energy? That's okay. Yeah. As long as it's okay if you're nervous, I would just double down on giving value and really connecting with the host. And that will counteract any nervousness.
Yeah. You'll get better. You'll get better. It just takes practice. Like you're going to be nervous. Well, I won't say you're going to be nervous. If you're nervous, it's okay. The only way to get rid of the nerves is to get more practice.
Yeah. So if you're hearing this and this is resonating with you, go to interviewconnections.com/consult, schedule a call with me or Jess. We would love to talk to you about the strategy, because if you are someone who feels like when you're listening to this, yes, this is for me, I have the right energy, and this collaborative, connected responder energy is perfect for my content creation and for attracting new clients, interviewconnections.com/consult. We would love to talk to you.